Che ora era a Seattle, se a
What
Perugia?
time was it in Seattle, if in Perugia?
It's a 9-hour difference, so then 3 a.m.
So 3 in the morning.
Yes,
So your mother was definitely asleep.
yes.
At 12 o'clock in Perugia, nothing had happened yet.
12 non era ancora successo niente.
How did Amanda justify that strange phone call to her mother on November 2nd? The body hasn't been discovered yet, so there was no cause for alarm. Yet, Amanda calls her mother at noon in Perugia, when it's 3 a.m. in Seattle. Why, prosecutors ask her on June 13, 2009, did she wake her mother in the middle of the night? You don't call your mother at that hour unless you have something particular to say.
I called my mom just to say that we had gone out of the house, and that I heard something about a foot.
Yes, but at 12 nothing had happened yet, in the sense that the door had not yet been broken down.
Okay, I don't remember, but if I had called, I would have done it because...
You did call.
Okay, fine, but I don't remember.
Ok, va bene, ma non mi ricordo.
I don't remember, Amanda insists. But the magistrates press her. How can she not remember that she called her mother at 3 a.m. Seattle time? And why did she call?
Se io ho fatto queste telefonate era perché...
If I made that phone call, it was because I thought I had to tell her something. Maybe I thought at that moment that there was something strange. Because at that moment, when I went to Raffaele's place, I thought there was something strange. But I didn't know what to think. Honestly, I don't remember this phone call, so I can't tell you, for sure, why. But I guess it's because when I arrived home, the door was open, and so for me that was a strange
Era
thing.
aperta, e quindi per me era una cosa strana.
Amanda calls her mother because she thinks there was something strange in the house, but that something doesn't stop her from taking a shower. And in any case, Amanda doesn't remember. When the case arrives at La Corte de Cassazione, Italy's Supreme Court in central Rome, Amanda's behavior is once again under scrutiny. According to the prosecution, the false accusation against Patrick Lumumba and the staged robbery were intended to divert the trail away from Amanda, and the memory of the American girl hunched over in the kitchen is a real one. The homeless man Antonio Curatolo, despite his heroin use, once again is shown to be a valid witness, and his personality does not influence his memories. The validity of his testimony is confirmed by the fact that he said he saw, the next day, multiple Carabinieri police officers, some in protective white jumpsuits, who he said looked like Martians. The crime had indeed just occurred, and the Carabinieri forensic team were there searching the area for evidence. Also, nothing for certain can be said about the time of death. The prosecutor of Perugia, Giovanni Galati, and Deputy Attorney General Giancarlo Costagliola dismantled the appeal ruling point by point. Deputy Prosecutor Luigi Riello requests the acquittal be overturned, and the Supreme Court judges, presided over by Stefano Chieffi, overturn it and order a new appeal trial. Since Perugia has only one criminal court which cannot retry the same defendants, a change of venue is announced. The case will go to Florence. Knox continues to stay put in Seattle and will be tried in absentia. But the Italian defendant, Raffaele Sollecito, must face justice in the Florentine court. In September 2013, just before that trial begins, Sollecito vents his anger in front of Italian television cameras.
Non auguro a nessuna persona al mondo.
I wouldn't wish on anyone in the world to have to live what I've had to experience, because my whole life that was ahead of me is now gone. It's been completely erased and taken away. For a person like me, an Italian like you, there should be the possibility of having a life, because at the moment I don't have any real life.
Perché al momento io una vita reale non ce l'ho.
Murder in Perugia, an exclusive 7-part podcast series by investigative journalist Antonio Giovane. Episode 6, Raffaele's version.
Today, Raffaele Sollecito has a life. When I saw him in court, over the course of multiple trials, he always gave me the impression of a boy who was lost, perpetually in disbelief, as if he weren't living this life, but was always watching it from the outside. If his lawyer, Giulia Bongiorno, had chosen to compare Amanda to Jessica Rabbit, for Sollecito she had chosen the iconic character played by Tom Hanks.
Raffaele Sollecito went through something similar to what happened to Forrest Gump.
So let's meet him, this Italian Forrest Gump. Sollecito arranged to meet me outside his house. He was living in Milan, on the west side of the city, in a peach-colored building in a residential complex. The street is busy. People are walking their dogs, some are jogging. I wait outside the front door. After a couple of minutes, I see him arrive. He's wearing a white shirt and a brown tie. His hair isn't as long as it had been in recent years. I follow him up a flight of stairs, and we arrive inside his small apartment. Kitchenette, bedroom, bathroom. We sit at the kitchen table.
Un po' d'acqua.
Grazie, sì.
Non solo giustizia, insomma, parlo di tutto, attualità.
As we start the interview, Raffaele tells me about Milan, a city he appreciates almost exclusively for work reasons.
Comunque sono cresciuto al sud con panorami.
I grew
un po'
up
più
in the south of
carini.
Italy, where we have a bit nicer views than Milan. But overall, even if it doesn't give you the impression of being a city with much nature or beautiful buildings, it still offers many opportunities, and there's just a lot always going on.
Si muove tantissimo.
Then we talk a little about his passions.
Lo yoga.
Yoga every morning. I follow it from an app on my phone, which then allows me to download new lessons every day.
Nuove lezioni ogni giorno.
There's also manga, and Japan in general, the mountains, exhibitions, theater, cars, rock music.
Adesso come adesso apprezzo molto gli archi.
Right now I'm really into the Arctic monkeys, and also like the mines, even if they get criticized maybe a bit too much. In the Italian music scene, I recently discovered Ministry, who are a bit of a niche group, but they are really
Un po'
good.
di nicchia, ma sono veramente bravi.
Raffaele is obviously quite different from the days in Perugia, when I saw him looking so lost in the courtroom. He is relaxed, more serene. He explains that he now works as a computer engineer, a cloud architect. I ask him to explain what that is.
Cerco di spiegarlo in sintesi.
I'll
no?
try to
Saprai,
explain it in brief. You know that companies, even at an IT level, have always had, let's say, the need to have these servers or these racks with blades and put all the software inside, or what we generally call workloads.
Noi in gergo chiamiamo workloads.
Even the summary doesn't help me much. I quickly get lost in the explanation. Let's move on. He tells me that he does volunteer work in prisons and collects testimonies from prisoners to help them with their integration once they are on the outside.
Spesso si va a opera e poi
I'll go
sono
to the
anche
opera
archivi.
prison here in Milan, and then, well, I've also been to Rebibbia in Rome. But now that I'm here, I usually go
Adesso
to
che sono
opera.
qua sono più spesso a opera, ecco però.
When I ask him how he spent the last few years after his definitive acquittal, Raffaele goes on the attack.
La cosa che
The thing that upsets me the most is the fact that the Italian institutions have just left me here. After they destroyed me, they never compensated me financially. They never apologized or admitted the wrongs of the Italian institutions. I was brought to my knees. My family was brought to their knees for no reason. My family has spent more than 1,200,000 euros to be able to face these trials. And we still have debts we are still dealing with.
How much more or less?
Around 400,000 and something.
Intorno ai 400.000 e qualcosa.
Sollecito's family debts add up to more than 400,000 euros. The Supreme Court has denied his demand for compensation. If the young man had told the truth immediately, without contradictions, the judges wrote, his legal position would certainly have been different. He has initiated civil liability action against several judges and magistrates. On the professional front, Sollecito has changed companies 4 times in his working life. He says he's suffered consequences at work because of his involvement in the Perugia case. One time in particular, when he was about to be hired by a company,
Dopo che mi ha fatto l'offerta,
They
io l'ho
made me
firmata,
the offer and I signed it. The company signed it too. But after a week, they withdrew it, telling me, unfortunately, we don't know if in our company, which is a multinational, if there are relatives of the victim. The whole thing shocked me. I said, but I didn't do anything to the victim. I was acquitted. What does this thing about relatives have to do with anything? And they said they wouldn't know how to manage it. We wouldn't know how to manage your media exposure, they told me. But I said, journalists won't come to you. What is the problem? There isn't a problem, but abroad especially, it's happened to me that the fact that we didn't talk about it much, in a way, let's say, it pops up a bit every now and then. Nothing is asked, but it's created this sense of distrust,
ha
of
creato
fear.
questo senso di diffidenza, di paura.
he says he has academic certifications, qualifications, and so, in a certain sense, he knows he's privileged.
E di quelli che escono e hanno
And
finito la
those
pena,
who get out and have finished their sentence, what do? Do they put a rope around their neck? I don't know. What should they do? Luckily, these are episodes that, in my case, have happened only a few times. Still, they were damaging, because by now I could have been hired by a multinational, which is where I would have liked to be working. But because of a huge error of our justice system, and because of the media painting me as something I am not, I have to suffer these slaps, run up
come non
against
sono, devo
these
subire
walls.
questi smacchi, questi muri.
Amanda, adds Raffaele, has been able to leverage her experience to help her professionally.
Lei adesso, da quello che so,
From what I
vive,
know, you can now
tra
write on
virgolette,
journalism in cases of injustice. I'm talking about writing in the sense of using this experience to then be able to make it a mission. Then a life mission becomes a job. Even the prosecutor and my lawyers have used this story as a boost for their career. So what's the problem? That is, in a sense, what their jobs are. I've chosen a totally different path. What I do has nothing to do with this story. And yet I also find myself in these quote-unquote situations that have been damaging and always caused by an image that was created of me.
Un danno, ma causato da un'immagine che è stata creata di me.
When we talk about those days, I can't help but point out his contradictions from the trials. The different versions he gave immediately after the crime, for example. The first time he said Amanda had stayed with him, then he changed his mind, explaining that he'd been talking nonsense and that Amanda had gone out. Then he changes again. Amanda was with me at home. How do you explain those inconsistencies today, 15 years later?
E come sono state presentate
But
le
how
accuse
were
da
things
parte-
presented by the investigators? They came to ask me things that also concerned the previous day or in following days. It's normal that I get confused and say that I don't know if Amanda was there or not. But if you write that I'm always talking about the same day, you're messing with me.
Mi stai prendendo in giro.
But can Raffaele really be sure that Amanda didn't go out late that night? After all, he's the one who claimed he wasn't sure.
Quella sera sì, e di fatto
That
se
evening, yes. In
mettiamo
fact,
conto
if we
come-
take into account, as I say and repeat, that given the evidence, Merit Kircher died between 9 and 9:30, we were certainly at home. Then what happened while I was sleeping is quite relative from my point of view. But not hearing Amanda waking up or leaving and opening the door and everything is hard to believe. I'm not such an heavy sleeper.
The time of death is crucial, as we've said. Raffaele accepts the conclusions of the coroner, Luca Lalli, who, after analyzing Meredith's stomach, established the time of death between 9 and 9:30 p.m. However, this range has never been confirmed. If the murder had occurred later, at the time Antonio Curatolo claims to have seen them in Piazza Grimana, could he be so certain?
I was awake at 10, even at 11. We fell asleep like young people usually do around that time, between 11 and midnight, I don't know now. But we fell asleep normally. I also would fall asleep at 9.
For Raffaele, there is clear proof that Goudet was the only one to act.
There's only his DNA at the crime scene. And then he also lied so many times.
Only Rudy's DNA was at the crime scene. Why, if Raffaele and Amanda played a part in the crime, isn't their DNA there? Giuliano Mignini claims there was too much blood on the floor to isolate the two other defendants' DNA. I asked Professor Marina Baldi, the forensics expert, if she agrees.
Basically, it may be true, in the sense that when there is a mixed sample, which is when DNA of multiple people are mixed together, if there is a majority sample, a clear majority, the minor components can disappear and not be visible. But in this case, it is not like that, because Goudet's DNA was found and maybe some small trace, especially the Y chromosome, which is the one that cannot disappear because it is unique, would have been found. So I don't think, I am of the opinion that, no, the DNA of the others was not in there. There was only that of Goudet.
At the second appeal trial in Florence, a serious clash takes place between the prosecution and the defense. Giulia Bongiorno, defending Sollecito, furiously attacks Lorenza Zugarini and Monica Napoleoni, the two officers who, together with other police personnel, questioned Amanda and Raffaele between November 5th and 6th.
This is a true black mark. The two of them were present that night, one on each side of the building. What does this mean? That I have proof, because I have it here. Proof that they were insulted. So, when Amanda says they were insulting me, why shouldn't I believe it? Why do they tell their families this? What happened to these two? You know that.
The Perugia murder trials are a grueling process, always based on the same testimonies, the same evidence. But the value of those testimonies and those clues changes depending on the perspective of the judges or courts. Thus, in Florence, Nara Capezzali and the other witnesses who say they heard the scream are proven credible, and the homeless man Curatolo is credible, according to Attorney General Alessandro Crimi.
On the other hand, Curatolo is sure of his memory, drugs or no drugs. Curatolo is sure of his memory, which places the two defendants in a compatible time. Then there is the problem of the date that we will address in Piazza Grimana.
Curatolo couldn't have been mistaken about the date for a very simple reason. On the evening of October 31st, Amanda was at Patrick Lumumba's pub and Sollecito was somewhere else. Therefore, the homeless man couldn't have seen them that evening. Yet, the ruling contains something paradoxical. It acknowledges that Curatolo saw Amanda and Raffaele in Piazza Grimana, from 9:30 to 10 p.m. on the evening of November 1st until around 11 o'clock or 11:30 p.m. that same evening. And then, a few pages later, it is written that at a certain time, reasonably between 9:30 p.m. and 10 p.m., both defendants and Rudy Goudet were certainly present inside the villa where Meredith Kercher was located. In short, the defendants were in Piazza Grimana and Via della Pergola at the same time. But the contradictions don't change the facts. For the judge, it was them. And that it wasn't just Rudy is also revealed by Meredith's physical attributes. Young, athletic, and a karate student. How was it that there were no signs of resistance on her body, no wounds, no scratches? So the victim didn't defend herself. And if she couldn't defend herself, it means there wasn't a single attacker. Then there's the footprint of a bare foot in the bathroom, and Rudy was wearing both shoes when he ran away. And then there's the cleanup of the crime scene, the staging of the broken window. And of course, there's Amanda, who inexplicably hears that heart-rending scream and implicates Patrick Lumumba.
Tu accusi Lumumba.
You accuse Lumumba. You accuse an innocent man in the knowledge of his innocence. And therefore, either you run an enormous risk by going after someone who you know has nothing to do with it, but who knows how, as if it were your conjecture, or you yourself were evidently present.
Eri evidentemente presente.
Compared to the initial hypothesis, however, something radically different is revealed here: the motive. Or rather, the spark is no longer attributed to attempted sexual assault. Meredith apparently became angry because Rudy had gone to the bathroom without flushing, and took it out on Amanda for bringing him home. Rudy allegedly attacked Meredith, attempting to rape her, while Amanda and Raffaele allegedly attacked her with a knife. Judge Alessandro Nencini sentenced Amanda to 28 years and 6 months and Raffaele to 25. But it's not over yet. The Cassazione, the Supreme Court, still has to be heard one last time. It can either uphold the sentences, postpone the case to another appeal, or even acquit without appeal. When the verdict arrives, Amanda is in the United States and announces she will stay there. Raffaele is in Italy, having graduated from the University of Verona with a thesis on how the web has covered this case. Both have since written books telling their stories. In anticipation of the Supreme Court hearing, the lawyers write hundreds of pages to explain that, from their point of view, the convictions are simply not plausible. Meanwhile, Patrick Lumumba is disheartened. He was forced to close his pub and received meager compensation for his 14 days of unjust detention. 8,000 euros compared to the more than €500,000 he was seeking. Rudy, for his part, is a model inmate in Viterbo prison, and is so far the only one convicted for Meredith's murder, despite having claimed that Amanda and Raffaele were the ones who killed her.
I heard the doorbell. For me, it was one of the girls who lives with her. She could be a friend, you know, it could be Amanda, it could be anyone.
Do you remember? It's Rudy's phone call from Germany to his friend Giacomo Benedetti. This isn't just any friend for Rudy, but something more. First, a middle school classmate, and then his best friend, as he later recounts in an interview on Italian national TV. Rudy claims that the person who rang the doorbell could have been Amanda. It could have been anyone. It was impossible for Rudy to imagine that his best friend was calling from police headquarters. But why did he change his story in front of prosecutor Mignini? In subsequent interrogations, Rudy would say, "I recognized Amanda Knox's voice." And in a letter to his lawyers, he spoke of a horrible murder of a beautiful, wonderful girl like Meredith, perpetrated by Raffaele Sollecito and Amanda Knox. He later explained that he changed his story because, quote, "I was afraid they would only blame me." Basically, Rudy feared that Amanda and Raffaele, in retaliation, would point the finger at him as the sole culprit. But something doesn't add up. How is it possible that he tells Giacomo, his best friend, in a private and supposedly confidential conversation that he didn't recognize Amanda, yet in court he categorically states to the prosecutor that it was her? And why, if he truly recognized her voice on the same day of the intercepted phone call, did he send Giacomo a text message that read, "Amanda has nothing to do with it because I had to fight against a man, and she wasn't there"?
Murder in Perugia is a podcast by Antonio Giovane. The English language edition is a co-production of One Podcast and World Crunch, with editorial supervision by Anna Silvia Zippel and Jeff Israeli. Production support Paolo Prosperini, Giacomo Aloisi, Emma Albright, Erwan Issanchou, and Laurie Gaucher. Post-production and automated voice matching of Antonio Giovanne's English narration by Audio.